Hello there, a very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You're watching Smart 24 TV, where we drive your business. My name is Anthony, and this is The Point. And of course, on The Point, we get to bring on board different stakeholders in our economy and discuss matters of policy and socio-economic transformation, and of course, what pertains to you as an individual in the country, to know about the economy and how you can be an active participant in our economy. My name is Anthony. Remember to catch us live on our YouTube platform, that is at Smart 24 TV Live. That's our channel. You can also follow us on Twitter at Smart 24 TV, and my personal handle as well at Anthony Sebali, and you catch the latest content on business in Uganda. Now today, of course, I have a very special guest with me, and we are talking the current state of the economy. I have none other than Mr. Apollo Muginda, who is the head of communications at the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Now, when you look at our economy, we've been through a lot over the last 2 years. We've been through a period of COVID-19, the pandemic, and then as we were trying to get away from the pandemic, Ebola came in as well. And then before we knew it, the Russia-Ukrainian war broke out, and a lot of things have been able to disrupt the economy. Just last year, we witnessed one of the biggest inflations of all time in terms of especially petroleum products. Inflation rose to a figure of over 10.7% around last year in July, and we continue to experience shocks from especially the Russia-Ukrainian invasion, and that of course continued for a couple of months into the end of the year 2022. Now, of course, currently we are from a back-to-school period, and many of the parents have been complaining, of course, of the rising prices of school requirements, of food, and of course schools have been left with no option apart from raising tuition amidst the rising pressures as well on the schools to of course provide for the children at school, and a lot of course has been happening in that direction. Now today we are going to discuss matters concerning the current state of the economy, and of course we'll look into the budgeting process, how far we've gone with the current national budget framework paper that was tabled last year in December. That's for the 2023-2024 budget. And we'll also be talking a little bit more about government programs that are currently under the work of the government, to see that we have them work for the people of Uganda. Now, of course, I have Mr. Apollo Muginda, who is the head of communications at Ministry of Finance, and I'm very, very glad that you're joining us. Mr. Muginda, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, our viewers. I'm delighted to be at Smart 24.
Wow, thank you so much.
I look forward to having a very fruitful discussion.
Yes, I think we are meeting for the first time this year, and I've been looking forward to this. So how has your 2023 been so far for you, personally, just speaking about yourself?
Yes, thank you again. So far, so good. We're picking up from last financial year at the Ministry of Finance. We are still in the recovery mode.
Yeah.
So everything, we are really trying to ensure that we move from the level of recovery to perfection. And sure, we shall get there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Talking about recovery, let's start our discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. We were in a lockdown for 2 years, and actually a little bit even more than 2 years. And then as we're coming out of the lockdown, there was a lot of, excitement. People were excited. Bars were open. Many businesses that had been closed were open. And people thought actually we were going to actually get to make money again as things were before the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, we witnessed inflation, very high prices, especially on fuel. And a couple of those, the fuel prices came down, but a couple of those shocks are still being felt, especially in the consumer price index. When you just look at the price index, how it has been rising over the past couple of months. Do you think back then, looking at COVID-19, the effects, have they come to a reduction, and has that effect been felt right now in the current economy?
Thank you, Anthony. Sure, you see where we're coming from. We are from the deep. If I have to use the expression of my permanent secretary, it's like coming from an ICU and you're knocked by a car, a van, and then you're admitted again, and then you get a very bad infection. So you can imagine where we're coming from. It's been a bad time, not only for Uganda, but as you know, this has been a global challenge, a global problem, which has never happened before. So we really come from far. As you know, everything was high. Talk about inflation, you talked about inflation. We moved from our normal 5% to almost now over 10%. But we are happy that this is stabilizing. The inflation is now peaking. We hope that this is, we know that in the medium term, this inflation is going to come back to the 5%. There are all signs that inflation is coming down. You know, we had very high interest rates globally. And as you know, because of very many issues, including depreciation of the shilling, we had a lot of global demand increasing, and yet there was limited supply. We had disruption in supply chains. We had a lot of even a capital flight. So you can imagine, and you know, for over 2 years, we are not collecting any revenue. That's why government decided that you're not going to put new taxes. And as you know, this financial year, no new taxes were put in place so that people can really recover. So this was a very bad time, and of course our debt went up. We had to borrow to survive this situation. So we are coming from that time, very difficult time, not only for Uganda, but the entire world. But I'm glad to tell you that we've been very resilient as an economy. Uganda's economy has been very resilient, and we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Our growth went down to 4.5 somewhere. Now we've been around we expect to grow around 5.5. But we know that in the medium term, we are going to go back to our levels of 6, 7. So we are very optimistic that this is going to be achieved. And as you know, we are put in place, government is really focused on recovery. Put in place measures to ensure that our economy recovers. And that's why when government not put new taxes for this financial year, we had to find ways of ensuring that we get the revenue to run the country. And that's why you can see that government has increased a bit on borrowing right from the COVID time to ensure that the economy runs, and other measures that government has been put in place. You remember when there was inflation, there was a coordinated effort between the physical and the monetary. That's why we had to work very closely with Bank of Uganda to ensure that inflation is under control. And of course, some economists thought this was not right, but as a Minister of Finance, we found it very prudent to work with Bank of Uganda to manage inflation. And we really proud, we are happy as a ministry that it's come to pass, that the inflation is now it's coming down. And we are very sure that in the medium term, as I told you, we are going to have this inflation back to our normal levels of 5%. But to briefly talk about the situation now, of scarcity of money at the time people are taking back children to school. This is expected, of course. We have not fully recovered. We are still in recovery mode. The economy is still recovering. And as you know, this is a time, it's not a time of spending so much. It's a time of ensuring that we spend carefully. In government, in the Ministry of Finance, we are spending money, we are focusing on spending money, but with some we are tightening the spending. So at the government level, there is tightening of spending, and this is what we expect all Ugandans to appreciate, that the situation is not all that good. The economy is still growing, still recovering, so people should ration, people should spend carefully. Recently there has been a debate about high fees, and this is the time to think about what you can afford. It's not a time, not just if the school fees is high in a certain place. Of course you don't need to fight.
But you see, in support, I saw a school fees, what do they call this? Fee structure.
Yeah.
And a senior one kid is paying 4.7 million. In our traditional schools, because honestly speaking, when we were growing up, we always wanted to go to the traditional schools. And formerly, the schools were actually admitting on merit, you know. But now the competition is so high that even those on merit are coming from very good schools, and their parents can probably afford these high fees. But it kind of looks impossible for someone who really, even if they have struggled so much and they have got aggregate 4, to get a place in one of the big traditional schools with a 4.7 fees structure, you know.
Yes, it's a serious issue. It's a national, even the Parliament has been debating this, if you remember. And the good thing that the Minister of Education has taken it up, and they are going to pronounce themselves on this matter. It's a cabinet issue. They are even the minister has said they are still waiting for cabinet to make a decision, so that there is a level of managing the expectations of parents when it comes to paying school fees. So that will be addressed in the short term. Yes. The other issue that I want to touch on is that really to assure you that the economy has remained resilient, and we are really now focusing on areas that can resuscitate the economy. We know that there has been an improvement in the agriculture sector, some recovery. We are also focusing on industrialization. You know that during COVID time, there was an government focused on import substitution. So this sector is really growing, and since then, government is really prioritizing the industrial sector. It's one of the areas that we think can help the economy to recover very fast. We are also expanding our trade. If we look at our performance of economy report, we see that really we are reducing our trade deficit. We are trading favorably across the region. So this one area that we are really putting a lot of effort to ensure that our economy recovers. And of course, you know, we have developments in the oil and gas sector. The recent activities in the Albertine Graben, you saw His Excellency the President recently launching the drilling of oil. There's a lot of activity going on, a lot of contracts. Ugandans are getting a share of these contracts, and you know our laws are now emphasizing local content. So we are seeing a lot of money coming into the country in terms of foreign direct investment. So, and of course, you know, for the person on the ground, the wananchi, government has already put in place programs In the last budget, government announced 1 trillion shillings for the parish development model. This is one of the key government priorities. We know that if it is taken up as we plan, we are going to have at least the people who are the 39% who read the president say they work for the stomach. We want to see them coming in the money economy. So this is a program, and if you've been following what we are doing now, we are progressing, although there have been delays, as you've heard, but at least where I sit, government is sending money to these circles, over 10,000 across the country. So we think this is one way of ensuring that there is financial inclusion, which is going to get these people out of not only poverty, but at least in the money economy. But of course, already there are some other programs, including Myoga, as you know. This, in addition, government has put money in UDB, government has put money in UDC. So these are done because and people can get money at affordable. This is what we call affordable financing. So we think these are some of the initiatives government is focusing to see that people access money, especially the private sector, so that they can invest this money, and in the long run, this will help to grow the economy. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I absolutely love the fact that you've just shed light on what's currently happening and what government is doing. But just before we go into the break, I want to point out the interest rates. That it has been a very contentious issue and an issue of debate, especially in the private sector. The central bank increased the central bank rate from close to 6% to about 10%, with a series of 6 to 7 and 7.5 and all the way to 10% in a period of about just 6 months. This was not just unique to us, but also in the US, they had central bank rate raised, which has been actually one of the highest since in the last century. But how does the central bank rate increment translate into a reduction in inflation? For example, yes, now we are at 10% and it hasn't changed for quite some time. How does it play out, especially for the private sector? Because I understand this central bank rate is in tandem with the interest rates on especially the commercial banks' loans. How does it translate into a lower inflation?
Well, thank you for that question. We had to do that, first of all. That's the BRI note, like you said, has been going up. But the purpose of increasing the central bank rate is to ensure that we don't have this extra liquid in the economy. We are trying to regulate the flow of money in the economy. Because if you don't increase and it goes out of hand. You've had countries where you need a lorry to a truck to go and buy a loaf of bread. We don't want to go to that level. So it was really necessary. And as I told you, Minister of Finance really worked together with the central bank to ensure that this goes up a bit. But we know that when the central bank, the rate goes high, money is expensive for the ordinary the private sector. And this is a concern of government. And the government is now very focused on ensuring that people access, there is money in the economy for the private sector to borrow. If you look at our planning now, even this financial year, we are reducing the money we borrow domestically as government.
Absolutely.
This is going to help the private sector We don't want to crowd them out. And we know once money is available, these rates, of course, will go down and people will get affordable financing. So this was a situation that was necessary, but we are very mindful as government. And I can assure you that even in the coming financial year, we are getting a very small fraction of money that government is going to borrow internally for the purpose of ensuring that the private sector is not crowded out in the economy.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Apollo there. We're going to take a very short break, ladies and gentlemen. But when we return, Mr. Apollo, we want to talk about the national budget. First of all, we want to first throw some light into the former budget, which we are currently coming to an end in a few months. And then we look ahead into the framework that was presented to Parliament and approved on the 31st of January this year. What are the key priorities this time round and why? You being, of course, from the Ministry of Finance, there is no better way how we can get this information. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm with Mr. Apollo Muginda, who is the Head of Communications at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. We are, of course, discussing the current state of the economy, and this is the point. We are taking a short break. Stay with us. Don't touch your dial.